Hi guys, it's Elise from MyCupcakeAddiction and I am so excited about today's cake. I've had a ton of requests from you guys to do something else Minecraft. So although I've got Minecraft cupcakes, I've got Minecraft fondant toppers, today I thought I'd do an awesome over-the-top Minecraft grass block cake. I know you've probably seen a grass block cake done before, but have you seen it done with a Minecraft pattern checkerboard inside? When you cut into this cake, it actually looks like the Minecraft pixels done in all different shades of green and brown. I'm super excited to show you guys how this technique's achieved, so let's get started. The things that you need for today's tutorial. I've got some of our perfectly pineapple buttercream frosting in green and also some of our chocolate ganache. I will leave recipe links to both of those in the description box below. I've also got some crushed Oreo cookies. I've got an offset spatula and a bread knife, a really sharp knife and a regular spatula. Off to the side, I've got a 12-inch cake board. I've just printed like a little Minecraft logo on a sticky label. I'll leave a link to that one in the description box below, or you can just find your own. And I've also got a set of our little Minecraft fondant toppers, which I showed you how to make in an earlier tutorial this week. I'll leave a link to that topper tutorial in the description box below. Otherwise, you can always use store-bought Minecraft toys. I've also got a disposable piping bag, which I'm pairing with a grass piping tip today. For the 8-inch cake today, I've used the equivalent of 2 packet mixes of chocolate cake mix and 3 packet mixes of vanilla. So you are going to need cake mix, but it's going to depend on the size of the cake you want to make as to how much. I've also got an 8-inch cake tin and I've got a ton of baking paper or grease-proof paper that I'm going to be using to line that tin today. Alright, so to start off with, you want your oven preheating, but we're going to make up this chocolate cake mix. So I'm going to use 2 of my chocolate packet cake mixes, but like I said, you can also use a double batch of your favourite recipe. I'm just going to add in all the ingredients that we need to make this, and I'm not going to make my vanilla just yet. I've lined my cake tin using that baking paper, and I like to line it with like a nice high collar all the way around the edges, and I also put a square in the base. This means I don't have to grease the tin, and it makes the cake really easy to get out. I'm going to scoop in about a batch and a half, so about 2/3 of that mix that I've got, that double batch, and I'm just going to spread it out. So it's kind of filling about half the tin, half the height up. Pop that off into the oven to cook. You want to wait till that first cake has cooked before making up just a single batch of that vanilla cake mix. And I kind of make these cake mixes up as I go because you don't want your cake mix sitting on the bench for 2 or 3 hours while all of your other sections of cake cook. So I'm just going to make up one of those batches of vanilla, and then I'm just going to scoop in about 2/3 of that single vanilla cake mix in with our chocolate cake mix. This is going to take that chocolate cake mix to like a lighter brown, lighter chocolate cake mix, which is going to give us that variation in colour for our 2 different browns in our Minecraft cake. So just mix that through, and then once again you want to line that cake tin. We're going to scoop all of that mixture into the cake tin and pop that off into the oven. For me, these half-size 8-inch cakes took about 40 minutes to bake, so there is a fair bit of baking time, and you can bake these in advance to save yourself some time on the day. Once your 2 brown layers are baked, you can make up the rest of your vanilla cake mix and then split it exactly in half, so you've got an even amount in 2 bowls. I'm going to add a little green food colouring to make a lighter green layer, once again relining my tin with that baking paper or that greaseproof paper, and in goes our lighter green layer, all smoothed out on top, ready to bake. Once that one's baked, you want to add about double the amount of the food colouring, so you've got a nice dark green layer. And you want this to be quite dark because you really want your 2 greens to have a nice amount of variation in colour so that you can really tell that you've gone to the trouble of making those 4 different colours. Scoop that into your tin, pop it into the oven, and finally your baking is done. You want to let all 4 of those layers completely cool. It will make them a little bit more dense, sturdy and easy to carve if you pop them into the freezer for half an hour or so before you start cutting. The first thing that I want to do when I'm carving my cakes is take off the tops. So pick your lowest cake, for me this was my light green, and carve away the tops and any sort of crispy edges that you can, getting it as even as possible. Because I know that's my lowest cake and I want these all to be really even, I'm now going to take my next lowest cake, which was my lighter brown, and I'm going to carve it in front of that green cake so that I can make sure I'm getting them exactly the same height. Repeat that with your darker green and also with your darker brown, and then just stack the 4 cakes on top of each other and get them in nice and even if you can. I'm using my bread knife, and I love a bread knife for this because it gives you a really nice sawing action, and I'm just cutting down all 4 of the sides so that I've got a really nice sharp-edged cube cake. I don't have any gaps, I don't have any variation in the layers, they're all exactly the same size now. Alright, so it's time to put on your measuring and mathematics kind of hat. So separate all of your layers and lay them out. And then you want to divide them. I use little toothpicks here just to make some little indentations. And I'm actually going to put in 8 toothpicks because I want mine to go across 8 layers. Because I've got an 8-inch cake, it's going to be roughly every inch, but don't forget we've trimmed off some of those sides, so it might be slightly less. I found using a ruler best. Once you've got your 8 toothpicks going along one side and then down the other side, just use them as a guide and use that really sharp knife to cut in along your edges. It doesn't matter if these are not perfect, but the neater you can get them, the better your cake's going to look. So you can see I'm cutting out a full square, and what you're going to end up with is like 4 different sized squares within your checkerboard cake. When I cut these out, these center squares actually make like a double pixel in the center of the cake, which I didn't love. So I think if I was to make this cake again, I would actually cut that center square into 4 individual little cubes and stick them in an alternating pattern. You want to repeat this, so you want to use your little toothpick guides and you want to cut out these exact same 4 shapes out of all 4 of your layers. This is probably the fiddliest part, and you do want to be really, really gentle as you're picking up these little pieces and as you're moving them around, because you don't want to risk breaking any of your little square pieces. Once you've cut all of your layers, you want to take some of your chocolate ganache. Now mine's really nice and fluid, so if yours has started to set, pop it back into the microwave so you've got a nice fluid ganache to work with. And I'm just going to line the inside of my dark green. Then I'm going to pop in the smaller square of my light brown. Once again, lining the inside with ganache, which is going to help all of our pieces stick together. And then I'm going to go with my light green and repeat the process again and put in that smaller dark brown square. So at the end of all of this, you should have 4 pieces that each have 1 piece of each color. Now I'm using my bread knife just to carve away the very top to make sure all of the layers of each of those slices are nice and even on top. For this next part, it pays to have, I've got a really large scraper, but you can also use just like a piece of cardboard, something quite large that you can use to pick up your cakes. So I've got my cake board, I'm putting down a smear of ganache to stick my cake, and then I'm using that cake scraper to actually pick up that whole piece as one, level it in the center of the board. Taking a bit more of that ganache, and don't go too thick with your layers here because you've got a lot of ganache in this cake. I'm using my offset spatula just to evenly spread it all the way to the edges. Using that little cake scraper again, we're going to pick up our next layer. So you want to make sure here that your outer layers are alternating. So if you've got a brown on the outside square of your bottom layer, the next layer should have a green, then the next layer should have brown on the outside, and the last layer should have green. This is going to make sure that you get that really nice alternation of color. Once again, you want to add another layer of ganache, another layer of cake. I have seen a ton of circular checkerboard cakes done, but I haven't seen a lot of these square checkerboard cakes. There's not a lot of information about them, so I really had to work this out for myself, and I hope that I'm showing you guys something that you haven't seen before. Add your last layer of cake and a final layer of ganache, and that's your Minecraft checkerboard inside cake stacked and ready. Now you want to take that ganache and we're just going to smooth it onto the sides of the cake. Don't worry if this is not absolutely perfect, because this is, after all, a grass block cake, so there's a lot of room for error, but you do want your edges to be as sharp as possible. So don't worry if your sides are a bit rough, but do try to keep those corners. Alright, so that's what I class as the boring bits done, all the baking and all the stacking, and now we can get decorating. So I'm just using my hands just to smooth those Oreo crumbs all the way up onto that ganache, which is going to give us like the base of the grass block, the kind of the dirt underneath the grass block look. You want to smooth that all the way up, but you don't want that Oreo cookie to go across the top of the cake. You really just want it up those 4 walls. All right, so it's all looking a bit brown at the moment, but your Minecraft cake should look something like this. Now you want to take your green buttercream frosting, and I'm using my offset spatula just to spread it really thinly on top of the cake. Don't worry too much if you go over the edges here, it doesn't have to be perfect. You want to take some more of that green buttercream frosting and pop it into your disposable piping bag with that grass piping tip. The grass piping tip is going to do most of the detail work on top of your cake, so really I'm just dragging and lifting and letting the frosting squeeze out all those little grass holes all the way around the edges of the top of the cake. Now you want to make it look like the Minecraft block by bringing those grass strands all the way down the sides. You might find that you have a little bit of trouble with the grass and the frosting sticking to the sides of that Oreo cookie because the Oreo cookie is quite dry. So I found it easiest to take my knife and just smear on a little bit of that buttercream frosting where you want the grass to go before you attempt to actually attach the grass strands with your piping tip. This just gives them something to stick to and it kind of flattens down the Oreo cookies underneath. You can see around the edges of my cake, you don't want it to be perfectly even. You kind of want it to be hanging down in areas and be sort of lower and higher so it looks a bit messy. Finally, you can position your little fondant or your little toy figurines on top. So I went with Steve, I did a creeper, and then I did a couple of the little TNT blocks. And once you've got them positioned, use your grass piping to begin just to give them like a little bit of a layer of grass around the outside. This does two things. It gives it a little bit more definition, brings them into the cake, but it also helps to secure them in place so that they don't fall over, particularly that creeper and that Steve, because they're quite tall. That is basically how you make your Minecraft checkerboard inside. So you can see with this cake, most of the work goes into getting that amazing design inside, but it's so totally worth it when you actually cut into this cake. To finish it off, I'm taking my little sticky label Minecraft, sticking it straight down onto that black cake board, and that cake is completely ready to go. I would love to hear your feedback on this cake. I'd love to hear how you guys are enjoying these surprise inside cakes. As you can see here, when that cake was cut, it is absolutely gorgeous, and everybody's going to look at it and just wonder how you got so many different colored checkers inside that cake. Make sure that you check out my Minecraft fondant figurine toppers and also my Minecraft cupcakes if you're a little bit Minecraft mad or planning a Minecraft party. And as always, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.